So when you first open After Effects, in the default setting, this is what you will get. We will, in the project panel, this is where we'll import our media. We have an effects panel where as we add effects from over here in effects and presets, we'll affect the layers that we are building in this program. We have our composition panel where we will be seeing the work that we're doing. And then we have our timeline where we will be building all of our layers. We also have a series of other tools like alignment, paragraph character, tracking tool that we can use. And if we need to open more windows, they can all be found up here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to double click in the project panel, and we are going to go to AEA Lesson 1, and we're going to select everything, and we're going to make sure that that's set in footage, and we will import them all. And so we have 3 video shots, a animation of a snowflake, and a title that says snowstorm. So what we want to first do is create a composition that's the length of this landscape video and the dimensions of it. So we will just click, drag, and drop it here on the composition bar, and that will create this layer that's called landscape. Right now it's set at half resolution. I'm going to set size to fit up to 100%. This is a standard video file, so we could probably watch it in full resolution without slowing down our machines too much. If you hit Command K, you will see that we have a composition that is 640 by 480. It's 2997, and it's 5 seconds long, which is fine for what we need to do. Next thing that we want to do is, actually I want to get this landscape out of this, and what we're going to do is we'll call it your name AEA 1. That's a good name for it. Okay, so next thing we will do is we will take our car and snow shot, and we will drag that on top, and I'm going to hit the, let's twirl down and let's take a look at these transform options that we have here. We have the ability to change the anchor point, which is this target right here, and what that anchor point will do is that it, when we rotate something, it will rotate around that anchor point. If we move positions, it'll do it from that anchor point, and if we scale, it will do it from that anchor point. So just, that's what the anchor point does. So we have anchor point that we can animate, position, scale, rotation, and opacity that we can animate. So let's go ahead and set our scale at 50%. Let's make it 40%. And I am going to find alignment. We're going to make sure that it's centered. Make sure that it's here. So we'll make sure that it's centered there. And let's align it from the top. And then I'm going to lower it to about there. Okay. Next thing we do, we'll select this shot, and we will go to our effects and presets, and let's look at bevel edges. We will drop that on there, and let's adjust the thickness, something like that. Next thing we'll do is we'll select that layer, and we'll hit Command D to duplicate it, And then we'll go back to our project and we will grab our snowboarding shot, and we'll hold the Alt button down, the Option Alt button, and drag it right on top of this layer. And then that will drop the new video in there but keep the same specs. And so now we can position. If I just hit the letter P, it'll just call up that. Okay. Next thing that we'll do is we will add our snowflake title. I'm just going to, this time instead of dragging it to the layers, I'm just going to drag it to the comp, but here it is right on top of our layers. Let's go ahead and center that in alignment and center it this way. And then we'll hit P and we'll just pull it down so that it feels like it's in a good spot. And then lastly, we will take our snowflake and let's look at the snowflake. I'm going to double click on the snowflake and it's going to open up the footage panel. And if I hit the space bar, we will see what this footage looks like. Now, you might accidentally, by double clicking on one of these layers, open the footage panel and then find out that you can't set keyframes or anything, because that's not what that footage panel does. You'll just need to make sure that you come back to composition to do that. And so then we will take our snowflake and we will drop that in, and we want that to fill the O of our snowstorm. So I'm going to hit S for scale, and we're going to set that, and I'm going to hit the up arrow just to kind of nudge it into a spot that I think looks good, and we'll say that's all right. And now we're going to do a very simple animation where snowstorm is going to enter frame and the snowflake is going to come in and land, and we're going to do that by creating keyframes. But the easiest way to do that in a motion graphic is you want to start with the end of your composition, right? So this is the end, and now we can define what we want things to happen at the beginning. So we have 5 seconds, and so let's say at second 1 is where we want snowstorm to stop. And so we'll go to our snowstorm title, and with position we will click this keyframe, and that will create a keyframe that will leave that position. And then we'll go to the beginning and we will just lower snowstorm out of the shot. And then with these 2 keyframes it will enter. Okay? Now I want this keyframe, if you look at this keyframe, it stops quite harshly, you know, clunk. So we want to soften that. So I'm going to click that and I'm going to right click, and we're going to go keyframe assistant, we'll hit ease, and that's going to soften the landing. See, it's a lot nicer there. Okay. Then once snowstorm enters, that's when we want to have our snowflake enter. And so I'm going to hit the letter P, and we're going to set a keyframe for where the snowflake should end, and let's say we want that to land at second 3. Now all we have to do is pull the snowflake out of the comp, and by hitting the space bar it'll pre-render. And I think the snowflake enters a little late, so I'm going to slide this 5 frames this way. Okay. So we want our ending to be soft. So I'm going to right click here, ease, and then I want to mess with these bevier handles that are on here and kind of make a more fun path for our snowflake to go on, so it's like blowing in the wind. And when we stop, we can mess with it even more. Alright, that's more fun. And then the last thing is that I want this snowflake to be rotating when we as it comes in. So I'm going to hit the letter R, and I'm going to hit rotation, and we want it to end, the rotation to end when it lands. And so if I hit the letter U, that shows us where all of our keyframes are in that particular layer. And so this is where I know that I want it to end. And so we could just drag this and it'll spin it either clockwise or counterclockwise, but I'm going to hit Command Z, undo. But I'm going to tell it to make 2 full circles. So that's 2 full cycles, 720 degrees, and let's see what that looks like. Alright, so I'm happy with all of this. So now we're ready to render. So we'll go to Composition, Pre-Render. You'll name it. If you named your name AEA1, let's call it L1 for Lesson 1. And then what we want to do is tell it where to go. And so here we can, you can send it to your desktop or wherever you want it to be saved. And then we need to tell it what kind of video we want it to be, because what is going to happen is it's going to decide by default to make a Apple animation codec. It creates large files, and files, even a 5-second file, will be hard to load up on Canvas. And so let's just get in the habit of making these Apple ProRes Lite. And click OK. Click Render. Now that it's rendered, let's watch the file before we post it. Everything looks right, so go ahead and post that, and you have just started your journey with After Effects.